Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Prabhakar Kore, Honorable Chancellor of the KLE University, for this kind invitation for me to be a part of this very important function, the 11th convocation of KLE University. I'd like to also thank Honorable Vice Chancellor for this opportunity and all the faculty of the KLE University. Usually, convocation addresses are given as books, lot of statistics and all written. I'm going to be a little different today. Let me start first by congratulating all of you, all the students whose careers culminated in this day, and all the gold medalists and PhD candidates who have secured this distinction. I'd like to also say how privileged you are because you are in a college, a campus that I've seen, which is so impressive, that having visited so many campuses all over the world, I can say very clearly this is probably one of the best campus that I have seen. So I think you are extremely privileged lot, and congratulations again for passing out. As I watched this function and as I watched the gold medal ceremony, there are two important, very distinct things that came to my mind. First is that 80% of the gold medalists seem to be girls. That either shows that the girls are more brilliant than boys or more hardworking, or a combination of both probably. The second important thing is that as people came to receive their medals and as they received their degrees, there was so much of discipline that whenever I've gone for these convocations all over the world, even Stanford I had gone once, you'll see that when the students come to take their gold medal, there's a lot of hooting, whistling, shouting. There are some favorite students, but this is so disciplined here. I think the discipline that Dr. Prabhakar Kore and his team has given to this institution is remarkable. As our Honorable Vice Chancellor has said rightly that your journey, one part of your journey ends here. The next part of your journey starts. And what I'm going to do is to give you certain lessons that I have learned in this part of the journey. Maybe for some of you it will be helpful. Let me start first with this very famous painting. This is called The Doctor. In fact, if you Google painting and doctor, you will get this. This was done in 1887 by a very famous artist, Sir Luke Fields. In this painting, you will see the painter Sir Luke Fields in the background in the black coat. You can see him in the black coat here. The child who's lying on the bed, his daughter who had diarrhea, had fever and was dying. You can see the painter and his wife very distraught, but you can see that the child is being watched by a doctor who was a country physician. This doctor in 1887 did not have any magic drugs. He did not have any imaging. He did not have any cultures. He knew that the patient is dying, but what he has and what is seen in this painting is the extreme empathy he shows towards this patient, extreme empathy. Sir Luke Fields appreciated this so much that he painted this scene of how a doctor's empathy should be there. Empathy is not sympathy. Don't mistake it for sympathy. Empathy is the ability to get into the shoes of the patient, clothes of the patients or the attendants to see how they feel. You should feel the same way. As all of you are now going to go to a new journey of looking after individuals and their health, I would strongly suggest that what you should think of medicine is not only an art and science, but also empathy. The equation of good medicine is art, science, and empathy. Just remember this. that whatever, whichever place you're practicing, whatever tools you have, even if you are in the smallest village, if you have this empathy, you will be a successful practitioner of medicine, whatever type of medicine you're practicing. This is very important. If you look at what happened to medical diagnosis, I know all of you are just passed out, so you're full of knowledge. We can make a diagnosis just by symptoms in 80% of the patients. By examining the patient, you can make a diagnosis in 84%. You don't require any instruments and all, just your hands, a stethoscope, and probably a few other instruments. If you investigate patients completely, you'll just increase your diagnosis to another 8%, 92%, 8% extra. And in about 6% of the people, you won't get a diagnosis, and only at post-mortem we get a diagnosis. In 2% of the patient, we'll never know what is the diagnosis. They die, we never know why they died. This shows that modern medicine is still what it was 100 years back. Symptoms, examining the patient, and basic investigation will give us the diagnosis in most condition. Now, why I'm emphasizing this is that everybody thinks that high-tech medicine has changed the course of medicine. No. If you actually look at this, our human life expectancy in the last 30 years has improved dramatically. Even in India, now we have improved from say 54 to 75, almost 20 years. And everybody thinks because of cardiac stents and because of treatment in oncology we improved. No, the improvement is only because of immunization, clean drinking water, and sanitary facilities. That's all. All the thing that high-tech medicine has done is to improve it by certain small percentage. For example, today, if treatment for cancer was discovered and all cancers can be cured, we can improve human life expectancy only by 3 years. Only by 3 years. So these basic things are very important, and we should not, as practitioners looking after our patients, forget this, that basic things are important. Because look at what happened to this corona wave now. In 1918, we had a Spanish pandemic. Millions of people have died. We had 4 waves. We didn't have any treatment. In 2019, we have the corona pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic. There have been 3 waves. Millions of people have died. The only difference is now we have vaccination. We didn't have then. And hopefully this vaccination will prevent a 4th wave and further deaths. So medicine is still the art of looking after patients, not high-tech diagnosis, because this is extremely important. There are definitely places where you require to have high-tech medicine. For example, in our field of gastroenterology, there's an explosion in endoscopy, diagnosis, treatment, and so on. At most of the treatment, 90% of my patients still don't require all this. They just require a simple clinical examination and treatment. This is important to remember, because if you look at what happened, this overkill story, for example, painkillers, NSAIDs came in a big way. They found that overuse of NSAIDs, painkillers were overused, caused GI bleeds. So the new type of NSAIDs, new type of painkillers called COX-2 inhibitors came, but there were no bleeds. Everybody started overusing it. And then they found that overuse of this can result in myocardial infarctions. And therefore, now we are starting to rethink whether they should, and they're banned in many countries. See the whole cycle of what happens. So you have to be careful. Whenever new drugs or new treatments come, be careful. Unless they're evaluated, they should not be given. To me and many of my patients, the best painkiller, pain reliever is not medicines, but the most powerful drugs in the world are 2 kind words from a good doctor. I've seen very often in practice that you just talk to the patient sympathetically, you just talk to the patient kindly, and you find that he's relieved of his pain. So this is again a very important message to all the youngsters who are going out there in practice, whatever allopathy, Ayurvedic, physiotherapy, and nursing, everybody requires this, that what our patients require is an empathy from us. So let me start with some advices. The first important advice is humility. It's extremely important to be humble. In fact, I was recently sometime back in Milan, and I was looking at this unfinished statue by Michelangelo, one of the world's, Michelangelo is the world's best sculptor. And at the age of 88 years, he didn't complete it, and below he had written that he was still learning. I'm still learning. Michelangelo, one of the greatest sculptors in the world, at the age of 88 years, says, I'm still learning, which means all of us throughout our life are still learning. At this age, I'm still learning. So many things to learn. Every day, I make it a point to at least learn 3 new things in my specialty. That's what you should do. Every day, you write down what are the 3 new things that you have learned in your particular area. And this will help you because we have a lot to learn. We can never finish learning. But always be humble about it, because one of the things that we find is that as we, especially those who have taken the super specialty degrees, is that certain amount of arrogance comes in. This happened to me also. When I finished DM in gastroenterology and came back, I thought I knew everything about gastroenterology. I became very arrogant till, of course, many failures came, and then I realized that how little we know. Because in medicine, we know how a disease occurs. We know why hepatitis B occurs, why hepatitis B, how it is transmitted, but we do not know why. This is a very important point. In medicine, many times we don't know why. Why did this certain patient get a cardiac myocardial infarction? Why did certain patient get an acute hepatitis? We don't know. Because positive science cannot answer the question why. They can just, at the best, answer how. This why is an open question, and this is why you should be humble. Of course, people say why can be answered by spiritual, religion, destiny, and so on. That's a different question. But still, there are many mysteries we don't know. We know only how, but not why. And this is important to remember. Because a wise man knows he's a fool, but a fool always thinks he's wise. So never think you're wise all the time, because then you're a fool. The second advice is about working hard. Now, I think a very important sentence that our Vice Chancellor made, I don't know whether you caught it. He said, work hard, but work intelligently. This is what we call smart work. You must work hard, but also work very smartly. Then only you can achieve what you do. Because whatever excellence you achieve in your specialty, it is not that you have achieved it by your birth, nature, and so on. It is by hard work. Very long back, Aristotle told this, that excellence is an art which is won by training and habituation. Some of you will stop your studies here. Some will go into further specialties. Whatever specialty you go into, you must work hard in that particular specialty. Hard work is the only way in which you can become an expert in that subject. Because there are now a lot of work, and this is again a very famous book that I'd suggest for the youngsters to read. It's called The Outliers. Malcolm Gladwell has written very clearly that there's several research, especially in other specialties, which have shown that to be an expert in any area, you require to work, for example, 10,000 hours. This is just a figure, which means that to become an expert, you can't become automatically expert. Just because you got an MCH degree today or a DM degree today, don't think you're an expert. You have to work very hard for the next few years to attain that excellence. Because most often, as an undergraduate, what happens is your studying is in between a little sleeping, little drinking, little food. So it's a mixed type of thing that occurs. But now that you've entered into a new journey, the new journey doesn't involve just studying, but studying in a very smart way, working in a very smart way towards your goal. There is no substitute for hard work. This is very, very important. You can never become good or great in any field. If Dr. Prabhakar Kore has achieved all this, is achieved in the last so many years, created an institution of that magnitude because of the hard work. It has to be hard work. A dream doesn't become a reality through magic. It takes sweat, determination, and hard work. And this is very important to remember. For all of you, kindly, this is the message that you must take. You must also work very hard in whatever field. And this is, for example, in gastroenterology field, when you're training, you have to train very carefully through. And because this is an institution which trains so many people, we actually train our endoscopists, for example, with as less casualty to the patient as possible. Because perfection without practice cannot be attained. There are only 2 specialties in the world where a trainees can cause death to a passenger or a patient. And these two specialties are a pilot and a doctor. Look at this. This is a Air France flight, which is being done, which is actually driven by a trainee. And this trainee was not properly trained, and what happens, you can see. So, when I heard that in this institution there's a very good simulation center, I was very happy. I'm happy that you have spent so much effort and time in this, because I believe that the future of training is going to be simulation, so that you can make safe doctors. So those who are going to further studies or training, I want you to be very mindful of your patients, very mindful that they are indeed come to you with a total respect, and that we must look after them. And training is one aspect, but also looking after them. The third important thing is to get along with your colleagues. This is very important. In fact, a large part of my success is because when I started, I had a very close friend in my surgeon, Dr. G.V. Rao. So because I am a therapeutic endoscopist, I do a lot of endoscopic work, which is risky. Some of these patients can have problems. If there's a problem, immediately I know that the surgeon is at hand to look after. I had this backing. So be friends with whoever colleagues you are, and it's very important. Even if you are practicing as a general practitioner, you should never criticize another colleague of yours. This is very important. This is again something we are finding in practice. This criticizing colleagues, which ultimately will lead to your downfall. Actually, be friends with everybody as much as possible, because ultimately that's where the success lies. In fact, not only with doctors, but look at this. Even with there's a lot of nursing staff who passed out here, and this is a very important study that came in the United States. United States, they found in the hospitals every July, the number of patients who are dying were very high. So they wanted to find out why. They found out in July, the nurses changed. The new batch of nurses who are passing come, and the old batch is going off. And because of the change in the nurses, the deaths are increasing. So you see, our nursing staff, the physiotherapy staff, all are important part of the ecosystem that we have. It's very important that we carry all of them along, that all of us together form a team for the patient's benefit. So this is very, very important. One of the problems you will face as you go into the society, the community, is the complications. Every one of you as a medical practitioner will have a complication in some part of your life. It's very important to know how to deal with your complication. And again, for all the youngsters here, I very strongly recommend you to get this book. It's available in Amazon. It's called Complications. It's written by a doctor who's working in Harvard, Atul Gawande. This is a very good book which tells you about how to deal with complications. But this is a very important paragraph, and I'll read this with you. We look for medicine to be an orderly field of knowledge and procedure, but it's not. It's an imperfect science, an enterprise of constantly changing knowledge, uncertain information, valuable individuals, and at the same time, lives on line. There is science in what we do, yes, but also habit, intuition, and sometimes plain old guessing. The gap between what we know and what we aim for persists. And this gap complicates everything. We do not know everything in science, in medicine. We have a lot of gaps. And because of this, complications are bound to occur. And complications occur, you should be prepared to deal with these complications. And as youngsters, you sometimes find this difficult, but this is very important, because medicine is not now and never been an exact science. Despite the exercise of greater skills, things go wrong. And when things go wrong, you must know how not only to deal with the complication, but how to break the news to the relatives, for example. Because they are trained very well how to do things, how to treat patients. We're taught everything clinically, but nobody teaches us the softer side of medicine, how to deal with complications. So as you go out into your journey into this new life, kindly learn this, that how complications should be. Look at how it has been dealt with your seniors. Practice this for some time, because no one will ask you why it happened. You will be judged with what you do when a complication occurs. It's very, very important. This is called the responsible response. When we produce a complication, it's our responsibility to sit with the relatives, talk with them, be frank with them. Sometimes it hurts, but it's better to be hurt than to be wrong. Because you will never be brave if you don't get hurt. You'll never learn if you don't make mistakes. You'll never be successful if you encounter, we don't encounter failure. So you will encounter failures. So one of the things that has happened in medicine is this informed consent now. All of you should know how to take consents. Every procedure should have a consent. This is becoming more and more complicated now. Sometimes even I don't understand the detailed consent forms that a department makes. It's so complicated. And then we ask patients. But you must remember that although we do this mechanically, still there is this in our patients in our country. This factor of trust is there. Several years back, 30 years back or 40 years back, when I started practice, it used to be very high. When I used to tell a patient, you have a stone in the bile duct, I'll remove it endoscopically, I'll do this, and I'll say, just stop, doctor. You do whatever you like. I trust you. Unfortunately, this has changed now. Now we have to put badges saying, I'm a doctor, you trust me. What I want all of you to do when you go out in this practice is become trustful doctors, so your patient trusts you. You develop a name in your city or center or where you are practicing. People say, this doctor can be trusted. We don't have to question him too much. It is very important to develop that name, a trust. So when a patient comes to you, he doesn't have to question you and so on. He has the trust in you. You should aim to develop a doctor who is trusted by the society and community, and this is very important. The other important advice I'd like to give you is regarding your teachers. I think all of you have had wonderful teachers. Some of them are sitting in the front benches here. They've devoted, they guided so much. Of course, in Indian culture, we had this Guru Kripa and so many other, but unfortunately, over a period of time, this respect for teachers keeps coming down. But remember, a teacher takes a hand, opens a mind, and touches a heart. So this is what the teachers do. And many of you had, I think, several categories of teachers. A mediocre teacher tells, a good teacher explains. But I think the great teacher inspires. I'm sure you have had some great teachers. In fact, in my own career, I had some very great teachers who inspired me to do what I'm doing. And I think this is, again, take this inspiration from your teachers and respect them. The other person to respect and to realize what they've done for you is your parent. Because as I see your parents on the top sitting there, how proud they are that what you have achieved. They are probably more proud than you are today. And I think it's important to remember that behind every child, there's a parent who believed first. And it's their sacrifices, their push that got you here. So kindly see that their due is paid because they are the ones who made you. The sixth advice that I'd like to give you is focus. Now, some of you, I know have become general doctors. Some of you have gone into specialty. Whatever you do, focus on one thing. We are supposed to have a broad vision, but this is one area where you should have a tunnel vision. Focus on your goal, what you want to do, and I'll tell you how to achieve your goal later on. Just focus and you'll achieve what you want. Now, all of you will be, I think all of you have worked very hard. You'll be good doctors. But how to become a great doctor? So good doctor to a great doctor, there is a difference. And this is from this book that I have read from, again, this is a book that some of you should get. It's called The Grit, written by Angela Duckworth. You have talent, you have effort, you become skilled, you become a good doctor. So effort and skill is achievement. But the difference between a good doctor and a great doctor. And this difference is communication. All of you should develop good communication skills. Only a great communicator can become a great doctor. We have so many good doctors. There are, I know, surgeons who are so good but so poor at communication that they'll remain to be good doctors but never great doctors. To be a great doctor, a great nurse, or a great physiotherapist, you have to be not only good but a good communicator. Communication is an important thing that differentiates a good doctor from a great doctor. So kindly learn the art of communication. Each patient requires to be conveyed in a different way, and it's our duty to do it. Again, everybody wants to be successful in life, right? All of you want to be successful. So for all the students there, I'll ask a question. What is success? And I'll give you the answer. Rich, powerful, famous. So if you're rich, you're successful. If you're powerful, you're successful. If you're famous, you're successful, right? So it's my duty here, giving this convocation address, to make you all successful. So I'd like to ask the students here, If you take these three categories, rich, powerful, famous, how many of you are successful? Who are the rich people? Nobody rich here? I think I can see one or two hands. Who are the powerful? No, nobody politicians, no politicians, children. Famous? No. So none of you are successful then? Okay. I'll redefine success. Success is being happy with what you're doing. All the sociological books have now said that success is happy with what you're doing. Now, how many are successful now? Oh, see, it just took me 2 minutes to convert everybody into successful people. So that is very important. Success is being happy with what you're doing. You must be happy with what you're doing, and then so whatever you do in life, be happy. It may be you may just be a general practitioner in a small village, but you must be happy with what you're doing. Then you're successful. It's not everything else that comes. So success is not an accident, it's a result of attitude. Remember that. You should not say, Mr. Prabhakar, Dr. Prabhakar Gore is very successful. He's not successful because of an accident. It's because of the attitude. He came to this society to make this into one of the best societies to develop education here. Our Honorable Vice Chancellor is successful because of his attitude. He could have been an oncosurgeon doing surgery elsewhere, but he wanted to develop. He was happy with what he was doing. This is success in attitude. That's very important. Because if you think you can, you can. If you think you cannot, you cannot. And you are right either way. You can say, I cannot, you're right. You'll never do anything. But if you think you can, you can. So whenever be very positive, because the winner has a solution for every problem and the loser has a problem for every solution. Have a solution for every problem and you'll always win. There are three kinds of people that I've observed in the world. Those who make things happen, like what is happening here in the university. Those who watch things happening, you're sitting behind and seeing, and people who wonder what happened. Things have already happened. So be the first person, the people who make things happening. Even if you go to a small village, setting up practice, how to set up a nursing home, how to activate the people, how to be positive about it. This is very important because real success comes to doers, not observers. Don't be an observer, be a doer in your life. Surround yourself with positive people. This is very important. This is what I found that in our group, sometimes we'll have negative people. Oh, this can't happen. This is not possible. This is not possible. Eliminate those people. Negative people give negativity into the group. Surround yourself with positive people, your friends and so on. It's very important. Positivity should go around because this will make the difference. Because the most important thing, and this is Shiv Khera, who's close friend, who said, successful people don't do different things. They do things differently. They don't do different things. They get up at the same time in the morning. They eat the same breakfast. They're doing the same thing, but they do it a little different. They eat smaller amount of breakfast. They exercise in the morning. They're very positive in their attitude. The same things they do, but a little differently. That's very important. And other important thing is there are definitely going to be occasions when you're going to fail. You want to do something, you don't succeed. Failure is never final. Remember that failure is never final. Of course, some of you are going to write for your NEET exam to get into MD, MS, to get into your super specialties. You may not get through first time, but failure is not. The only man who never makes a mistake is a man who never does anything. So if you do something, you'll always make some mistake. Don't do this thing. And the other important advice, the ninth advice that I'd like to give is whatever you do, you dream big, but do it in small steps. You can't tomorrow become Dr. Prabhakar Gore. You can't. It will take a long, long time. Do it small steps. Become a leader in your community, become a leader in your society, and then go on. So even as a doctor, you should not think that you'll suddenly become big. This is an example of how we started. We started a small clinic of 2 people, myself and Dr. G.V. Rao. We went small. It took us 30 years to start from the small clinic to get to AAG hospitals here, which about 5 years back, the chief minister then told me, can you build the world's best gastroenterology hospital? 30 years back, I couldn't have done it because our small steps came. And then I could realize this large, big step, okay, we can do it because we now have the capability to do it. So you see, do things in small steps and ultimately it may take 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. You will achieve your ambition. And this is what will finally happen. Of course, most of our success is because of the wonderful team we have. We have 400 consultants who are outstanding in each of them in their own field. But for every one of us, the power of subconscious mind is important. All that we are result is what we thought. If you think positively that in 20 years time, I'm going to be a doctor who does these things, you will become. Subconscious mind is very powerful. Even if you don't believe in destiny, there is a subconscious mind which directs you. Kindly have this positive attitude and you'll do everything right. My last advice is regarding the goals. Again, like very clearly what a vice chancellor said, intelligently you must think, you must work intelligently. This is called SMART. What does it mean? You put goals. One is specific. Specific goal meaning that next 2 years, I'm going to do MS. Next 3 years, I'm going to do DM. That is, you're actually having specific targets. It is not that after 10 years, I'll become great. No, have specific goals. Measurable goals, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Achievable goals. Don't think suddenly you can become Abdul Kalam. You cannot. It has to be achievable. It has to come in small parts. Very realistic and make it time bound. Never think that I'll see what happens next year. Make it very time bound. Have a positive thought, have a goal, make it time bound. And all of you can become great achievers, can become really a big boon to the society. And finally, a small advice. This is an advice that comes from some of my failures too, because life is like having two balls, a glass ball and rubber ball. Now, what is the difference? If you throw a rubber ball, it will bounce up. If you throw a glass ball, it breaks. It doesn't come up, right? So, rubber ball is like work. Even if you lose it, you'll get it back again. Glass ball is like family, friends, and health. If you lose it, you'll never get it. Thing you have to be very careful about is family, friends, and health. Because if you lose that, you'll never get it. Your work, you can always get it back. So, in spite of all this, pay attention to that because this is very important. And as you grow, you should look after, as I told you, look after your parents, look after your kin, and so on. And finally, as I end, I know there are people who are sometimes we attribute everything to God, religion, and so on. But just listen to what Mother Teresa said about doctors, about us who look after the health of patients, that hands that help are holier than the lips that pray. I think this is a very important message. We, as keepers of health for our people, are the high priests in the temple of health. People come to us, they come to us and give themselves totally to us. They trust us so much. Just imagine, person is coming and you're operating, they're giving it totally to them. This trust is very important to keep. The hands that we use to help our patients are holier than anything that can be said. Keep this trust, help the society, help the patients, and I'm sure that all of you are already successful, will have greater success. Once again, I'm extremely thankful to KLE University for giving this opportunity to be here. Thank you.